The first time I heard a bulldozer on my land, I thought it was a thunderstorm rolling in over the ridge. Then I saw the fresh trench straight through my alfalfa field, like someone took a knife and didn't bother cleaning the blade. And there, parked like they owned the place, was a homeowners association truck, on the one property in this valley that isn't even part of their HOA. I'm Frank Dalton, retired firefighter. Not a lawyer, not a politician, just a guy who bought a quiet farm outside Bozeman because I wanted mornings that didn't start with sirens. 36 acres, a small upstream lake my dad dug decades ago, and a gravity-fed line that keeps my irrigation honest when summer gets mean. It's not flashy, but it's mine, and I've got the deed to prove it. Cedar Ridge Meadows sits down the road, nice gates, perfect lawns, and a board that acts like they're running a small country. I'm outside their boundary line, outside their dues, outside their community standards, which is why seeing neon survey flags in my grass made my stomach drop. It was a Tuesday, of course it was, and I was walking my dog Ranger along the fence line when I noticed the orange markers. Dozens of them spaced like a marching line cutting from the county road toward my lake. One had scribbled on it, Section 3 pipe route. I stood there for a full minute just staring, waiting for the part where someone says, "Oops, wrong property." No one showed up. No knock on my door, no letter in my mailbox, no call, nothing. So I called the county sheriff's office, not because I wanted drama, but because I wanted a record. Deputy Mark Holloway rolled in about 20 minutes later, boots crunching on gravel eyes, scanning the flags like he'd seen this movie before. He asked one simple question, "You authorize any of this?" And when I said no, he nodded and said, "Then they don't come in here." That should have been the end of it. You'd think grown adults would hear private property and back up like a normal person. But HOA boards don't back up. They double down. Friday morning I hear engines, heavy ones, and when I crest the rise by my barn, there they are. Two pieces of equipment, a white pickup with a magnetic logo slapped on the door, and a guy in a hard hat pointing like he's directing traffic at an airport. Right behind him, a woman in a red blazer steps out like she's arriving at a press conference. Melissa Hartwell, president of Cedar Ridge Meadows Homeowners Association. And if you've ever met the type, you already know her smile came with fine print. I drove my old pickup straight down the field and parked it nose to nose with the lead bulldozer. The operator killed the engine, annoyed like I interrupted his lunch, and Melissa walked up slow and confident like she expected me to apologize for being in her way. "Mr. Dalton," she said like we were old friends, "we're installing a community water line. This route is approved." I looked past her at my field. Approved by who? She didn't blink. By the board, for the benefit of 500 households. That's when the foreman, Evan Brooks, according to his vest, held up a clipboard and tried to talk fast. "We have an easement," he said, tapping a page like it was a magic spell. "It's in the development plan." I held out my hand. "Show me the recorded document, county stamp, book and page, not a plan." Melissa's smile tightened. "Frank," she said, and I hated how she used my first name like a leash, "don't make this difficult. You're one property. We're an entire community." I shrugged. "Then the entire community can stay on the land it actually owns." They didn't leave, not right away. They hovered, made calls, pretended their paperwork was being forwarded, and finally backed out slow, dramatic, like I'd personally delayed world peace. I thought maybe, just maybe, that was the last I'd see of them. But at dawn the next day I heard it again, that deep grinding sound of steel chewing dirt. I ran outside in boots I didn't even lace and my stomach turned cold. They'd started without me. A trench, fresh, wide, and ugly, cut right through my alfalfa like a scar. Clods of soil piled in neat ridges, irrigation lines snapped like dry spaghetti, and the smell. That raw, wet earth smell that hits you when something living gets ripped open. I stood there and felt something I don't like admitting because anger is easier than reality. Not maybe I'm wrong in some dramatic way, but that practical sick feeling that whispers, what if they've got something filed somewhere? What if this turns into months of paperwork while my field bleeds money? For about 10 seconds it felt like the ground under me belonged to whoever had the louder engine. Then Ranger barked sharp, furious, and it snapped me back. Because even if they had some fantasy document, they still didn't get to destroy my property first and explain later. So I did what I learned in 22 years of emergencies. I stopped arguing and started documenting. I walked the trench with my phone out, filming every foot, timestamps, tire tracks, broken irrigation couplers. The survey stakes the equipment numbers. I took wide shots, close-ups, and slow pans that showed exactly where the line crossed my posted signs. Then I installed 2 trail cameras, one aimed at the field, one aimed at the access point, because if someone's bold enough to do this at dawn, they'll lie about it at noon. Melissa called me that afternoon. Her voice sounded offended, like I'd spilled coffee on her white carpet. "Frank, this is unfortunate," she said, "but you're obstructing a critical infrastructure project." I laughed once, short, humorless. "Unfortunate. You bulldozed my crop. We're providing water security for families," she snapped. "Do you want to be the man who deprives children of water?" That line, "children," is the oldest trick in the HOA playbook. Wrap your overreach in a blanket and call it community. I kept my voice flat. If you need water, ask like a normal person. Don't trespass like a thief. That's when she tried the next move, authority. "We can fine you," she said. "We can place a lien." I paused just long enough to let her hear the silence. "You can't fine someone who isn't in your HOA." She hung up. By Monday, my neighbor Nate, who actually lives inside Cedar Ridge, pulled into my driveway looking uneasy. He didn't even step out at first. He just leaned out his window and said, "Frank, they're telling everyone you're blocking the pipeline." I nodded. "Of course they are." He swallowed. "People are mad." That part stung more than I expected, not because I needed their approval, but because I could already see how Melissa worked. She didn't just want the pipeline, she wanted to paint me as the villain so nobody would question her. And if I let that story settle in, it would spread faster than the trench. So I called an attorney, Russell Kane. Older guy, calm voice, the kind of lawyer who asks for facts instead of drama. I emailed him the deed, the parcel map, and my videos, and he called me back within an hour. "Frank," he said, "I'm looking at your chain of title. I don't see an easement recorded across your field." I exhaled hard. "So they're bluffing. Or they're sloppy," he said. "Either way, we treat it like trespass and property damage." Russell moved fast, cease and desist letters, certified mail, and a request for an emergency injunction. He told me something I'll never forget. HOA boards love to act like governments, until a judge reminds them they're not. Then he asked one question that made everything click. "That upstream lake, who owns the water rights?" My dad was old school. He didn't trust handshakes and he didn't trust community boards. Everything was filed rights, maintenance records, the works. I drove up to the lake that evening, the sky low and gray wind pushing ripples across the surface. There's a concrete box near the outflow, nothing fancy, just a metal handwheel valve that controls the feed into the line. I stared at it for a long moment, not like some movie villain, but like a homeowner looking at the only leverage he's got left. I called Russell from the driver's seat. If I close the valve, I said, "Am I within my rights?" He didn't hesitate. "If the source is yours and they're diverting without permission, yes, but do it clean. No threats. Just control your property." So the next morning I turned the handwheel slowly, one rotation at a time. No theatrics, no satisfaction. Just a quiet, heavy finality. The hiss of water faded, and the line went still. By lunchtime, Evan the foreman called me, voice tight. "Frank, we can't pressure test," he said. "We're not getting flow." I kept it simple. "Because you're pulling from a private source you don't own." He tried. "Melissa says," I cut him off. "I don't work for Melissa. Pack up. Leave my land." An hour later, Melissa called again, except now her voice wasn't polished. It was sharp, frantic. "You turned off the water," she said, like she was reading a charge sheet. "I shut off my water," I replied. "You're sabotaging community infrastructure." "No," I said, "I'm stopping theft." She went quiet for half a beat, then hissed, "You can't do this." I almost laughed, because that's what Karen types always say right before reality hits them. "I already did," I told her. "And the court has your name on an injunction request as we speak." 2 days later, a sheriff's deputy walked onto the job site with papers in hand. I wasn't there when it happened, but Nate texted me a photo equipment, lined up workers standing around, and Melissa in that red blazer frozen mid-sentence like someone finally muted her. The order was clear. stop work, vacate the property, and preserve all materials for inspection. And when Russell filed the damages, crop loss repair costs, trespass. Melissa's community project suddenly had a price tag she couldn't bully away. At the hearing, Russell brought maps, overlays, and photos that made the judge's eyebrows climb. Melissa tried to talk about public benefit and board authority, but the judge didn't care about her speeches. He cared about recorded documents, and Melissa didn't have them. When the judge said the words unauthorized entry and ongoing harm, Melissa's face did that little collapse people get when their script stops working. No smile, no blazer magic, no for the children, just consequences. The last thing I saw was the equipment backing out slow, careful this time, because suddenly my land wasn't one property anymore. It was evidence. Melissa didn't look at me when she left. She just stared straight ahead like she was trying to outrun the sound of her own overreach. And I didn't throw a party. I just stood by the trench and listened to the wind move through a field that was finally unmistakably mine again. Lesson power only lasts until it hits a boundary that's written in ink.